For years, these tool brands have been every place, from construction sites and home garages to the largest shelves in America. Their logo is still there. The product box is still being sold. But something is happening that very few people are noticing. Consumers have stopped buying them. There is no bankruptcy filing. There is no media crisis. No sensationalist headlines. It's just that sales are gradually declining, shelf space is shrinking, and the presence of these brands is quietly disappearing from customers' purchasing decisions. The problem isn't that these tools suddenly got worse. In fact, many products still function perfectly normally. But through the market investigation process, a concerning commonality is gradually emerging. Long-term consumer trust has been broken. In this video, we'll break down the 8 fastest declining tool brands, analyze the hidden signals behind the silence, and point out warning signs consumers need to recognize before it's too late. Let's start with the first name. There's a strange phenomenon happening with Craftsman. The name still sits prominently on the shelves. The logo is as familiar as an old American highway sign. But buyers are just walking right past, as if they've just seen a once famous diner that's now just lit up with no customers. What's remarkable is that Craftsman didn't disappear due to a major slip or a noisy incident. If you look closely, this is a silent kind of breakdown. It starts with an identity crisis. Under the same Craftsman logo, you can find tools manufactured in many places with varying levels of finish, prices ranging from budget-friendly to near-premium, and all displayed side by side like a jumbled map. Buyers aren't afraid to pay. They're afraid of the feeling of opening the box and wondering, which version of Craftsman did I just buy? And in the world of tools, ambiguity is poison. Because people don't buy a drill like they buy a shirt. They're buying a system, a belief that the next time they come back, they'll find a compatible item of the same quality, with the same promise. But when a brand no longer clearly states who it is, consumers are forced to do what they hate most. They have to look up each product line, compare each code, and decipher the brand like they're reading a small print contract. Retail behavior also reflects that. Craftsman is still around, but it's increasingly seen as a convenient option to fill shelf space rather than a brand that draws customers in. When a brand falls from its default position, it loses its most valuable intangible asset, purchasing habits. So, the question for you is, have you ever bought Craftsman and been surprised that the quality wasn't the same as the last time? Or do you still believe that Craftsman is fine as long as you choose the right line? And right after this, we'll meet a brand that's even more frightening in a different way. Not because it's controversial, but because it's disappearing from the market conversation. Porter Cable? If Craftsman confuses people because they no longer know who it is, Porter Cable is scary in a different way. It's slowly disappearing without anyone noticing. No scandals, no controversies, no falls big enough to make the news. Porter Cable didn't lose, it was forgotten. For many years, Porter Cable held a fairly secure position, not flashy, not high-end, but reliable enough for light tradesmen and homeowners. It's like a common sedan. No one brags about it, but everyone is okay with it. The problem is, the tool market has changed the game and Porter Cable hasn't kept up. The cordless revolution has transformed batteries from an accessory into the heart of purchasing decisions. Consumers no longer ask if this machine is powerful, but rather, how long will this battery system last? While competitors are constantly expanding their platforms, launching new lines, and pumping out long-term investment signals. Porter Cable is like a ship anchored in place, few new products. The battery system is not expandable. There's no indication that this is an ecosystem that will grow with its users. That silence gradually extended to retail behavior. Porter Cable didn't disappear immediately. It was pushed to the sidelines. From a prominent position in the store, it gradually shifted to online only or appeared sporadically on a few small shelves. For buyers, this is like an unspoken sign. Even retailers are no longer betting big on this brand. In a market where consumers plan for 5 to 10 years of use, future uncertainty is an unnecessary risk. The tool might still work well today, but if replacement batteries become increasingly difficult to find, and if there are no new lines to expand, then that ecosystem becomes a dead end. And so Porter Cable fell into the most dangerous state. No one argued about it anymore, not heavily criticized, but also no longer on the consideration list. And you, what do you think? Does a hated brand have a chance to come back? But what about a forgotten brand? And next, we'll talk about an even more subtle case, where the product is still praised, but the signs of trouble lie above the brand gear wrench. If Porter Cable is a brand that has faded into obscurity because it's no longer part of the conversation, gear wrench is a more nuanced story because the problem isn't in your hands, but above your head. On the surface, everything seems fine. The ratchet feels solid. The socket works smoothly, and many mechanics still nod in agreement. But as we followed the market signals, the picture that emerged resembled a financial film. What was concerning wasn't the instruments, but the future of the umbrella brand. Gear wrench is part of Apex Tool Group, and in recent years, the narrative surrounding Apex has shifted from innovation and product line expansion to chilling terms, like financial pressure, restructuring, and a strategic tightening. The average consumer may not read business news every morning, but they feel the ripple effects through very ordinary things: slower product launches, quieter marketing, more cautious retail plans. It's like walking into a restaurant that's still open, the food is still good, but the owner starts reducing a staff and cutting back on the menu. No one says anything, but everyone can see something is shrinking. In the world of hand tools, trust isn't just about whether something works. Trust is the unspoken promise that in 10 years, you'll still be able to buy supplements, find replacement parts, and that support will still be available. When the parent company signaled instability, buyers began to change their behavior. They no longer built systems with gear wrench, but instead switched to a more fragmented approach, buying items as they needed them without long-term commitments. And this is the invisible slide, from a brand to building a collection into an inspired retail brand. Another layer of doubt is the issue of brand overlap. When a corporation owns multiple brands in the same segment, consumers will wonder if they have to prioritize, who will they save first. As soon as that question arises, the safe option usually wins. So, what do you think when it comes to tools? Do you buy based on their current quality or on the brand's potential to remain relevant in 10 years? Have you ever skipped a brand just because you heard rumors that the parent company was having problems? And right now, we're going to a name everyone recognizes but which is stuck in another trap. Its positioning is so vague that buyers don't know which segment to trust it in. Crescent. There are brands that don't fail because they're hated, but die from a worse tragedy. Everyone recognizes them, but no one actively chooses them. Crescent is a classic example. This name was once associated with the image of an adjustable wrench, a symbol found in every garage like an old flashlight in a drawer. But in the modern tool market, brand recognition is no longer enough to drive purchasing behavior. When we look at how Crescent appears on shelves and in consumers' minds, there's a disturbing recurring theme. Crescent is drifting off the positioning map. It doesn't fully align with high-end durability, nor does it embrace the value of affordability. It's like a car without a segment logo. You can tell it's a car just by looking at it, but you don't know what category it belongs to: family, pickup, or sports. And in a hallway full of choices, if you just make the buyer stop to guess, they'll choose another brand that's clearer. This issue is further compounded by the fact that Crescent is also under Apex Tool Group, meaning it carries the same cloud of uncertainty at the parent company level: little fanfare for notable launches, a cautious strategy, and a sense that the brand is being maintained rather than invested in for growth. Consumers may not follow ownership structures, but they read signals through very mundane things. Advertising thins out. New products no longer generate buzz in the community, and most importantly, on the shelves. Crescent is rarely the main attraction. Imagine a supermarket. There are products placed right at eye level, with lights shining on them, and large, clear price tags as if inviting you, and there are products next to them that are still being sold, but they're like grab-and-go items if you see them cheap. Crescent is increasingly falling into the second group. When a brand is acquired on a whim rather than being actively sought out, it's a sign of a quiet but intense decline. So, Mike, what about you? The last time you bought Crescent, was it because you believed in it, or because it happened to be in the right place at the right price? And in your opinion, how long can a brand survive if all that's driving it is nostalgia? And right now, we're going to delve into an even more unpredictable case: a brand whose fate isn't in the hands of the market, but in the strategy of a single retailer, Kobalt. Kobalt is not like the brands we just mentioned. It is not old because of its heritage, nor is it faded due to a lack of innovation. The problem with Kobalt lies deeper. The brand's fate is not in the hands of the market, but in the boardroom of a single retailer. Kobalt is a house brand. That means its existence isn't determined by whether consumers like it or not, but by a much colder question: does this brand still serve our retail strategy? When the strategy changes, a brand can be reoriented, narrowed, or disappear as quickly as an item is removed from next season's promotion. For tool buyers, this creates a very specific sense of unease. There were times when Kobalt was pushed as a semi-pro option: stronger, more beautiful, and more expensive, but then at times it's pulled down to become an intermediate tier, filling the gap between low-cost and high-end products. These diversions are not always clearly explained, and consumers are very sensitive to inconsistencies. The biggest concern lies with the cordless system. Buying Kobalt means tying the future of batteries, accessories, and system expansion to a single store. For some people, it's convenient, but for many others, it's like betting everything on a road with no exits. Will this battery be supported for another 5 years? Will this line be replaced by a completely different new version? Buyers don't need a definitive answer, just enough doubt to choose a different brand. As a result, Kobalt is rarely publicly boycotted. It's being treated with caution. Consumers buy individual items when the price is really good, but few dare to build a long-term system. And in the tool market, hesitation is the biggest enemy of sales. So what do you think? Are you willing to invest years into a brand whose future depends on the decisions of a board of directors rather than market demand? And next, we'll enter the toughest segment of the industry, where just a moment's inattention is enough to get crushed: entry-level power tools, and the name struggling there: skill. If you had to pick the toughest segment in the entire tool industry, it would be entry-level power tools, where profit margins are paper-thin, competition is as dense as rush hour, and a slight misstep can crush you. Skill is stuck right in the center of that mill. In theory, Skill has everything it needs to survive: a familiar name, an accessible price point, and a direct focus on the DIY and home user groups. But when observing actual behavior at the point of sale, one issue became clear. Skill couldn't tell the story of why it should be chosen. In a hallway packed with boxes of drills, saws, and grinders, each brand tries to shout louder, cheaper, and more durable than the others, and a skill was silent. The packaging doesn't clearly state the advantages. The ecosystem isn't large enough to create a sense of commitment. And for first-time buyers, that silence is very dangerous. Entry-level buyers are not looking for complex specifications. They seek simplicity and peace of mind. They don't want to think too much. They don't want to worry about whether the battery will be changed, whether this line will be discontinued, or whether they'll have to buy everything from scratch the next time they return to the store. And just one fleeting mention of battery issues, or seeing the product appear and disappear from shelves, and that fragile trust immediately shatters. Retail behavior is very clearly reflected. Skills appear unevenly across stores, sometimes being heavily discounted, and sometimes disappearing completely. For consumers, it's like an unspoken signal. This brand doesn't seem to be a long-term bet. In the budget segment, where buyers are already cautious, inconsistency is the biggest warning sign. As a result, Skill fell into a state of consideration for a few seconds, then was skipped. It's not that it's unusable, but that it's no longer the clearest and safest option. Do you think when you buy cheap tools, you prioritize a few extra features? Or do you prioritize the feeling of being sure that when you come back next time, everything will still be there? And next, we'll talk about a brand where the problem isn't with the product, but with a colder question. Will it still be on the shelf after you buy it, Silverline? Silverline is not a brand that consumers have turned away from due to a sudden drop in quality. In fact, for many years, Silverline has clearly existed in the value segment. It's cheap, easy to buy, and always available. But it was this ever-present assumption that began to crack. And as distribution faltered, trust collapsed faster than any marketing campaign could salvage. The first signs didn't come from the product, but from the shelves. A week is still enough to see all the samples. Next week, there will only be a few items left. Then suddenly, the online listing disappeared without explanation, just like a bus that used to run on time suddenly leaving the station. For tool buyers, this triggers a very instinctive reaction. If it's hard to find today, what will it be like tomorrow? In the world of tools, cheap isn't a problem. Uncertainty is the real problem. Consumers are willing to buy affordable items, but they are not willing to hunt for accessories, blades, or replacements every time they need them. When the supply chain starts to falter, even usable products feel risky, like buying food from a store you're not sure will be open next week. And then the familiar spiral appeared. Unstable goods cause the retailer to reduce their commitment. The shelf is shrinking. Reduced presence weakens sales. Weak sales further make retailers more cautious. You don't need a major crash, just enough stock outs to make buyers lose the habit of returning. It's noteworthy that Silverline hasn't been heavily criticized. It fell into a much more dangerous state, being treated like unlabeled clearance merchandise. Buyers can still get something if the price is really good, if there are no other options, but to build a long-term toolkit, most of them shook their heads. So, what do you think? Are you willing to save a few pennies today if the trade-off is the feeling of uncertainty about whether you'll be able to buy that item next time? And right now, we're going to delve into the final case where the issue isn't just distribution, but the entire future of the brand becomes so uncertain that users begin preparing for the worst-case scenario. Triton is the most perplexing case on this list for many people, as Triton's issue doesn't lie in performance. For those in woodworking or with small home workshops, Triton was once a rather special name, specialized tools, distinctive design, and a feeling of being made for a group of people who knew exactly what they needed. But that very specialization became a fatal weakness, as the entire future of the brand depended heavily on logistics and distribution. Triton's signs of instability didn't appear as product defects or a wave of complaints. They appear in a much more subtle way. A sample machine disappeared from the shelf without notice. An accessory that was once very easy to buy is now hard to find every place. A familiar consumable suddenly goes out of stock for a long period. For tool users, it's like driving a good car, but the gas stations along the way start closing one by one. The core issue lies in the fact that Triton is almost entirely dependent on a narrow distribution system. When that pipe malfunctions, everything behind it immediately lacks oxygen. The product is still running well today, but future support is becoming a big question mark. And in the world of tools, no one likes surprises after they've paid. What's more concerning is the change in user psychology. When confidence wavers, people don't buy more, they prepare. Prepare by stocking up on spare parts, prepare by keeping old things. Preparing for brand scenarios may become less readily available in the coming years. This is the most dangerous red flag. Customers are no longer planning with the brand, but planning to deal with the brand. Triton doesn't need a mass exodus to fall into a crisis. As soon as there are enough people entering, that niche ecosystem will naturally shrink. So, what do you think? Is a good tool enough for you to invest long term if you're not sure you'll be able to buy accessories for it tomorrow? And looking back at all 8 of these names, a bigger question awaits us at the end: what really destroys a tool brand quality or trust in the future? If there's one common thread running through the 8 brands just analyzed, it's not poor quality tools. Most of them still work well, even in certain contexts. What truly turns consumers away is the erosion of trust in the future. Non-expanding batteries, a stagnant ecosystem, inconsistent distribution, or the brand's fate being outside the market. What about you? Have you ever stopped buying a brand even though the product was still usable? What makes you decide to believe or not believe in a long-term ecosystem of tools? Please leave your perspective below. If you're interested in a market analysis that read between the lines to help you avoid making the wrong purchases and understand the stories behind familiar brands, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the next reports. The content in the video is analytical and observational of the market at the time of creation and is not intended to attack or confirm the financial status of any brand. All purchasing decisions should be based on personal needs, usage conditions, and up-to-date information from the manufacturer. Thank you for staying with me until the end. See you in the next videos.